Well, I think this is very encouraging news in the run up to Christmas, but we mustn't get ahead of ourselves. It's early evidence, and it just suggests that fewer people needing hospital treatment after getting infected with Omicron compared to the Delta variant. But the data differs from different centres. We have a Scottish study coming out of England and South Africa, and so the range of reduction in what severe disease is quite large. It ranges from like 30 to 70%. And there are a couple of concerns about that. I mean, one is even if it does turn out that Omicron is milder, the sheer number of infections are still going to overwhelm the whole hospitals, and people are still going to get sick. Perhaps the biggest concern at the moment is that Omicron is quite prevalent among younger people. It's circulating much more rapidly in younger people, probably because that's the group that's mixing more. And the worry is that's going to transfer into older people. So the study that's just come out from these different centres is all about young people getting hospitalised. And we know that throughout the pandemic, younger people have been more resilient to the virus. And so the worry is what will happen when this spreads into an older population. It's going to do that. It's inevitable. But it does tell us overall that Omicron is a more milder infection than Delta. That's got to be a good thing, but we can't let our guard down. It's going to be a combination of the fundamental properties of the virus itself. So even though it looks more infectious, some early lab data coming out suggests it doesn't quite behave with the same efficiency in terms of getting into our cells as Delta, which is a bit odd because it is more infectious. But I think a lot of that is to do with immunity. So I think the other side of this is a virus that has adapted in somebody, probably in South Africa, whose immune system wasn't working very effectively, and it's become a little bit more resistant to the immune effects in our bodies. And of course, it's facing a large number of individuals with lots of immunity. So these high levels of immunity from vaccination and from previous infection is going to help us as well, I think. So it's a combination of an interesting change in the virus itself, and the fact that that also a lot of us have immunity, albeit not as great as the immunity we get once we're boosted. But my view is that this is not a surprise, that as the virus adapts to our bodies, that it would become more infectious, but less disease-causing, less pathogenic. And there is an example of this, because in the late 1890s, there was a pandemic that was called Russian flu, which was all around the world and caused millions, a lot of people died. But actually, it turns out it was one of these coronaviruses, one called OC43, which is now one of the common cold coronaviruses. We all get it every year, and probably accounts for about 5 to 10% of common colds. And so you see there how that virus then adapted over time. It's possible that's what we're seeing with the Omicron variant, but it doesn't mean that it won't be difficult and dangerous in some individuals who are more vulnerable, whose immune systems aren't as effective against the vaccine, or indeed people who haven't been vaccinated. I think it's a difficult one. I understand the dilemma the government's in. I wouldn't like to be in their position, actually, but I do think we should be doing our utmost to restrict the spread of this virus now, because the more cases we have, the more sickness we'll see, and the impact that's having not only on hospitalizations, but also on the number of people going off sick from work. We know there are lots of staff absences, and it's estimated that in a couple of days' time in London, it could be up to 20% of NHS staff will be off sick. So I think dampening it down would be useful, and I think some of the restrictions that are going to come in on Boxing Day in other parts of the country will significantly help with that, actually. But I understand, England looking at the data. I worry that we've dithered and delayed in the past, and the worry is that if you don't do some sort of lightish touch measures now, you might have to come in with more stringent measures and restrictions later on. I hope that's not the case, but I think, again, as we keep saying, we just need to keep an eye on the data. And then I think take personal responsibility. It's up to all of us now just to be cautious. I think people are being as cautious as possible and wear face masks, avoid large gatherings in poorly ventilated spaces, and use lateral flow tests. We didn't have lateral flow tests a year ago. These are wonderful tools for detecting whether you are infected and whether you are infectious. So I think that's really important, because it will help you in deciding how and who you should mix with, and also hopefully prevent you from infecting granny over Christmas.